Welcome in to the Late Night Gamecock Show. Tonight is February 25th, 2025, Alex. Is that weird? It's what, 2/25/2025. It's just weird when I look at the date.
I mean, it feels like it just turned to 2025, and now we're a few days away from March. It's pretty crazy.
And I think it's been tough because for Gamecock fans, especially, it hasn't been a great basketball season. And, football ended on a dud with the loss to Illinois in the bowl game. And then you have, Gamecock basketball is going to come right back. And we know what the women are going to do. And then the men won this past weekend, which was good.
Yeah, that was a much needed win. And I know we'll dive into it here a little later, but you can really just hear the sigh of relief from those guys post game. And it was a good win for them. And now we can see if they can build off of this here down the stretch run.
Yeah, and there is a game tonight on the men's basketball side. The men will face off with Missouri in 58 minutes. So big test on the road for the Gamecocks, obviously a long way from home. But look, the Gamecocks men's basketball team, for good, bad, and different, have found a way to compete with some of the elite teams in the SEC so far. Maybe not getting that win, but maybe the win over Texas will propel them. It's kind of funny, Alex. I don't know if you know this, but the softball team and the baseball team at South Carolina are undefeated. And I know that you do know that. That was a joke. But Alex, how many other teams in the country can boast that stat at this point in the season?
I'm sure not many, if any.
Yeah, there's only two, and I was hoping that you knew the other one. I don't know who it is. I know that a bunch of college baseball teams lost this past weekend that were in the top 25. I think there were 27 losses combined over the top 25 teams. So it's got to be somebody in the top 25. Just don't know who. I know it was not Clemson, because Clemson did lose over the weekend. But it's been a long time since we've had a Tuesday night show with the men and the women and the baseball and the softball teams all having a winning weekend. So we're excited for that. Did I mention that it's Carolina Clemson baseball weekend coming up? So a lot to dig in there.
That's another one that's hard to believe that's already around. I mean, I know it's just only a few weeks into the season, but I mean, this season, we're already two weekend series out of the way, and you got midweeks going on now, but it's hard to believe it. Clemson series are already here as well.
Oh, Alex, it's crazy because I don't know what the number is now, but it used to be 56 regular season games in a college baseball season. And I think baseball and softball both sneak up on Gamecock fans because you might have 5 games in 7 days. And you can accrue a lot of games quickly, but the Gamecocks are playing their 9th game of the season. They're undefeated, and that's roughly 18 to 20% of the way through the regular season. Wow.
Yeah, and I just looked it up, by the way. Your little stat there to see who the other team is. It's an SEC team. It's Oklahoma.
Oklahoma. Well, that makes sense. Yeah. Oklahoma is ridiculous in softball,
and pretty funny there that both baseball and softball, that's their first SEC series is against Oklahoma.
Wow, that is an excellent nugget that Alex Jones of thebigspur.com is bringing in to the introduction of this show. Spring ball, Alex, is right around the corner. It seems like it comes faster and faster every single year. We've seen a number of teams start canceling their spring games. As far as we know, the Gamecocks are not going to do that. But, those 15 practices in the spring are really important. And some coaching staffs feel like a game environment might actually cause more injuries, and so they're gonna fall off of doing that. But we'll see what Shane Beamer does in the coming years. As far as we know, the spring game is still on. But Alex, let's go ahead and hit the opening credits. When we come back, Alex Jones is going to give you an update on SEC basketball. And right before I hopped on here, Alex, I don't know if it's changed, but the Gamecocks were up 5-2 in baseball. And they hit 3 homers.
Yeah, we're currently it's 5-4 right now. Gardner Webb hit 2-run homer, tied up, and they're in the bottom of the 4th now. 5-4.
All right, well, we'll hit the intro. We'll come back and we'll give all the sports score updates.
Welcome to the Late Night Gamecock Show from Chief Sports South Carolina. Here are your hosts, Matt Anderson and Alex Jones of thebigspur.com.
So again, this is Matt Anderson and Alex Jones. Alex Jones of thebigspur.com, Matt Anderson of thebigspur.com, but one of the lurkers, one of the people that pops in from time to time. I don't write 20 articles a day like Alex does, but I'm happy to have everyone here tonight. Again, it's February 25th, 2025, 02252025. But Alex, what's happening on February 25th, 2025 around the country right now?
Yeah, so really the most interesting college basketball score at the moment is Georgia's up 53-35 over Florida. That game's in Athens, and I mean it's a game Georgia's I think was maybe next four out in Lenardi's bubble this morning. I mean, if they can find a way, that would be a win that at least would get them to that first four out, and maybe would push them back over into that on the right side of the bubble. And that's a team Georgia that's been struggling here down the stretch. I think they've lost 4 straight, and it's kind of one that you maybe had circled on your calendar for South Carolina as another one they could find a way to pick up. South Carolina's got them at home. We know South Carolina's played at home, but right now we'll see how this one goes. We know how explosive Florida's offense is, so second half is just getting started. So we'll see how that.
Well, Alex, it's funny you mentioned that because I have a lot of friends that like to gamble, and they're seeing like plus 400 odds, plus 415 odds on Florida win the game outright starting the second half. And look, I haven't seen a second of the game, so I don't want to comment on it outside of the fact that they've all said, based on the game so far, like they're not going to take Florida to come back and win. So if you're a gambler out there, take that for what it's worth.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to see what the stats are right now. So here, so Florida shot 36% in the first half and 29% on 5 of 17 from 3. And Georgia shot 78 or 77% from 3 on 7 of 9 and 67.9% overall from the field. So maybe one of those games where Georgia's just really hot. They got some guys on that team that can hit 3-pointers. So kind of seems like if the first half stays the way it does, maybe it's just Georgia's game.
So what else we got going around the country, Alex? I know it's 5-4 Gamecocks over Gardner-Webb right now.
Yeah, on the SEC tonight, there's a few games. Although we've mentioned South Carolina, Missouri at 9 o'clock. Then you got Alabama, Mississippi State at 9 o'clock, and Tennessee and LSU at 9 o'clock as well. That one's going to be on the SEC network. And I think the only other top 25 game going on right now is Duke and Miami. Duke's up 15 on Miami, and Miami's been struggling. They're 2-14. Obviously, when Jim Larinaga got stepped down middle of the season, I think the kind of just season was already not great, and then it just kind of continued to go downhill. And we know what Duke is right now, so I think that's really it for right now. There's some other games going on, but that's really the 2 biggest games at the moment.
Yeah, actually, we're going to get to Gamecocks here in a second, but I don't know if you followed the national news, Alex, but evidently Duke's head assistant coach is being courted by Miami to be the next head coach there. So maybe he's doing a job interview and, seeing that team in person, see what he wants to do. But
I wonder how long it's going to take for them to announce that. Or are they just kind of waiting for this game to get over with before maybe just wait for the season to be over. But it seems like the writing's on the wall with that one.
Absolutely. So let's move on to Gamecock stuff. We're not here to talk about teams around the country. We're going to give you updates as we can. But the men's team is undefeated so far, as we mentioned at the top of the show, Alex. I don't think anyone would say that the men's I always do this, Alex. I say the men's baseball team as opposed to like a men's softball team. But the baseball team is undefeated, Alex. And look, it's not murderer's row by any means, but I think we've learned a lot about this baseball team so far.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that stands out so far from what we've seen through these 8 games or so is the defense. That's one they've been pretty good so far. And, I think they maybe had 2 errors in that Queens game. But for the most part, overall, it's been a big step forward under Maneri from last year to this year defensively. And then we knew pitching staff-wise what this team, from the depth standpoint, was going to be. But the pitching has been really solid, too. Obviously, the bad news of Eli Jersenbeck being out for the year, that one hurt because, going into the season, I think, you're probably projecting him to be a South Carolina's Friday night guy. But, from what you see now, maybe Matthew Becker has really shined. He's been really good. Jake McCoy's had his moments as well. And I think, and then Dylan Eskew obviously didn't have a good start this last one, but obviously he was injured. It seems like there was a muscle strain or something. So we'll see kind of with the pitching staff what happens with that this weekend against Clemson. But, obviously being, up right now in Gardner-Webb, you want to find a way to finish that one and continue your momentum into Clemson where, I think we'll really find out about South Carolina this weekend.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy, Alex, because, I think back on, just people that follow baseball 365 days a year at South Carolina. And South Carolina is very fortunate that they do have fans that follow it 365 days a year, just like football at Alabama, just like football at South Carolina for that matter. But, sometimes the coaches know what they're talking about. And sometimes John Whittle knows what he's talking about because in the preseason, in the fall, in the spring, whatever, it was always, okay, well, I think that Dylan Eskew, Matthew Becker, Jake McCoy are looking like the best pitchers. And everyone said, well, what about Eli Jersenbeck? What about Roman Kimball? What's going on? And sometimes, there's an opportunity for coaches to see these guys day in and day out. And look, from the results so far, we're going to talk about those in a second. I don't think any Gamecock fan has any issues at all with pitching. But Alex, before we get to pitching, I got some notes here. Really, Ethan Petrie and Nathan Hall have kind of set the tempo and the tone for this Gamecock baseball team so far. Ethan Petrie, oh my gosh, batting .444 from a batting average, an .852 slugging percentage. And look, I know a lot of people don't know what a slugging percentage is that are – I shouldn't say a lot of people, some people, but that's just how many bases you're getting per hit, essentially. And to have an .852 slugging percentage through 8 games is pretty ridiculous. And I'm pretty sure he's added to that tonight. He has 2 home runs, 3 doubles, a triple, and 6 singles. Getting on base, .559. Alex, what has Ethan Petrie shown you so far this year based on expectations coming in?
Yeah, and it's kind of the answer I'm going to give you is pretty much the same I'm going to have for a lot of these guys is they all have hit the ball pretty hard. They've been a little bit unlucky at times too. Like they've hit balls, right at people or, with the way the weather's been here recently, the ball just hasn't really been flying out the ballpark. And there's been some hard hit balls. Like I was at the Queens game. I was covering the Queens game and Ethan Petrie hit a ball to dead center field that's 113 miles an hour off the bat. And any other night that ball gets out, but it was caught. I think it was on the warning track. And so it's just a lot of that. The hitting's taken a step forward from last year too, and I think it's just a lot of it is there's been some unlucky as well. But tonight, actually, when you're looking at it, a warmer weather, they've already hit 4 home runs in this game. One spot that's been kind of interesting in the lineup that they're looking to, I think, see who can step up there is in the 2-hole. And Jay Swayota right now, he's DH in the night, and in 3 at bats, he has 2 hits, which are both home runs. So I mean that maybe I think he's got a chance obviously now to be in the lineup come Friday in Clemson. But they've also hit. I mean tonight they've hit. Let's see, KJ Scobie's hit a homer and Colfer's hit a homer. So and the ball's flying tonight. They got 9 total hits, and so obviously these guys will be tested this weekend. Clemson's got a good pitching staff, but I think the hitting from right now, offensively, not just to dodge the Ethan Petrie question because he's been really good, and we knew he was going to be really good. I mean, we know the type of caliber player he is, but I think the offense is in a good spot right now.
Yeah, and talking to some guys that know baseball more than I do, like I played until whatever majors pony, I can't remember, didn't play in high school, but they all just said how close Ethan Petrie was to like a .470 batting average last year and just cleaning up a couple things. And look, I don't think Ethan Petrie is going to hit .470. I don't think he's going to hit .444, whatever he's at right now. And, at this point, he looks good. Nathan Hall has been hitting the ball well. He's got a home run, a couple of doubles. Those guys have combined for 16 RBIs through 8 games. But I do think the Gamecocks are going to have to pick up their batting average. 281 is fine, but it's not fine against the competition they're going to be playing going forward. Yeah. And I wonder if there's anybody that, you've watched all the games. I've watched all the games. Is there anybody you think has some extra pop in that bat that we haven't seen yet?
Maybe one would be Nolan Naraki. Like, I think he's one to really watch. I mean, he's hitting 368 right now. And I mean, he hit one, I think that was Sunday against Milwaukee. I mean, he crushed that ball. And I think he's one that can kind of be that X factor in that lineup. We know kind of what the top of the lineup is going to be. Obviously, that two holder is still trying to figure out, but Hall's been really good. Petrie's been good. Kenny Jones is really good. If they can get maybe in Naraki in that five holder, really continue to, he's off to a pretty good start right now, but if he continues doing what he's doing, I think South Carolina's going to be in a good spot. And they just went up 9-4, actually, by the way.
Grand Slam?
No, I'm trying. The stats just disappeared on me, so I'll figure it out.
We'll figure it out.
Nathan Hall hit a 3-run homer. They were up 5 or 6-4, and then Nathan Hall just hit a 3-run homer.
Oh, Nathan Hall, speak of the devil. We just talked about him having a great start, and he's continuing that. I think that 281 batting average is not great. But you've seen teams like Arkansas and Texas A&M in past years get to Omaha with like a 280 team batting average when you have those dudes in the middle of the lineup. But they have a 339 on base percentage, and as a team, 439 slugging percentage. So they're really making the most of their at bats if they're not getting hits. Most of the hits so far seem to be, I shouldn't say most, but, slightly less than 50% have been for extra bases, and they're making the moments count. 38 walks versus 52 strikeouts. I think that's a pretty decent number. If you can be close to a 1-to-1 ratio on walks and strikeouts, you're doing a pretty daggum good job, and the Gamecocks are there. So, Alex, thoughts through 8 games, thoughts on tonight. I guess we're halfway through the 9th game of the year before we move on to the pitching staff. Just talk about the position players.
Yeah, I think we've kind of hit the nail on the head offensively with those guys, but defensively, it's been really, really solid so far. You saw over the weekend and really kind of in that Sunday game too, a lot of really good defensive plays in the outfield. I mean, I think Blake Jackson made a diving play in left field. There was another one I'm forgetting right now, but it was another really good play. And
Jordan Carrion had one that was ridiculous.
at third
Will
base.
Tippett had 2 or 3.
Yeah, it was just a really solid day, and that's kind of been the story of the season. They've been pretty good in defensively, and that's kind of the key that, if South Carolina can continue to improve a little bit more offensively, that will help. But if they can be steady in the field, that's obviously going to help keep games close, and then that also is going to help the pitching staff continue to do what they're doing.
Yeah, and I was really happy for Will Tippett on Sunday. Will Tippett is one of the best people ever meet in your entire life. Any success that comes to him, I'm extremely happy for. And to go 4 for 5, getting his opportunity, that was great. Looking at the pitching staff, we talked about it briefly earlier, but Dylan Eskew looks like he's probably going to be out at least for Friday night, and he's been the Gamecocks Friday starter. That means that Matthew Becker will probably slide into that Friday night start. Matthew Becker on the season, 2-0, 1.59 ERA, 11.1 innings pitched, 17 strikeouts versus 4 hits and 0 walks. I mean, what can you say about Matthew Becker?
I mean, you can't have a much better start than what he's had. He's been dominant, and obviously, we'll see. He'll be tested. He'll have his biggest test this weekend. But I mean, what a start, and that's exactly what South Carolina needed. Because I think going into the season, we talked about the depth of the pitching staff, but we need to see what South Carolina had in that one in their starting rotation. Really, in 1, 2, 3, we kind of knew what they were going to get with Jerson Beck. Obviously, he's out, but if Matthew Becker can step up. Potentially, we don't know how it's going to roll out this weekend, but if he can step up on a Friday and Saturday and continue to do what he's doing, and obviously, you hope the stats like that continue, but once you face better hitting, and especially in the SEC, we'll see what happens. But I mean, he's shown that he can continue that into, not only this weekend, but in the SEC play, and that's going to be huge for South Carolina.
Yeah, Becker's been great. Jake McCoy's been great. Both those guys on Saturday and Sunday have combined for 34 strikeouts, and it's actually 17-17 apiece. 4 walks combined. Look, I know they're not playing the best teams in the country, but at the same time, these guys know how to hit. Even though you're in, the upper regions of the country where there's some, cold weather, you're still on the batting machine. You're still taking pitches indoors where you can. Pitching staff as a whole has a 2.09 ERA. And what I thought was pretty pretty staggering, Alex, is 99 strikeouts and 69 innings played.
Yeah, I mean that the strikeouts have been coming in bunches for South Carolina, and I think for the most part they've been pretty good from a walk standpoint as well, because that's something that I think when you look back in recent years, there's been some struggles with that, and that's something that they're going to have to continue to do what they can to make guys get on bases and not give them the free base or free first base, because especially leadoff walks or really walks in general, normally especially in the SEC, are going to lead to runs, and I think that South Carolina's got to continue what they're doing, but I think Terry Rooney, the pitching coach of South Carolina's done a pretty awesome job so far from what we've seen in the early goings of South Carolina, and they're just going to have to continue to find a way to keep it going now.
Yeah, and opponents are hitting 148 against the Gamecocks. I don't know what the stats are through tonight. The game's still being played. We'll figure that out over the course of this week and through the Clemson series. I do think that some of those relief pitchers are getting their opportunities and making their mark. When you have a team ERA of whatever I said, what was it?
2 something.
Yeah, 2.19 or something like that.
Yeah.
Brendan Sweeney seems to be the closer. He has 3 saves, got to lead the country in that at this point. And then just looking at it, he has a 0 ERA on 3 innings pitched, only giving up 1 hit. So this team's been fun to watch.
Yeah, and that was another spot. That closer spot was another one that I think was up for grabs really in the preseason. We didn't know much about who was going to fill that spot. There was talk maybe could Matthew Becker slide in that role for a long inning closer type of guy. But if Sweeney can keep this going, that's been one of the biggest bright spots for them. He's been really good coming in those late inning situations, and I mean that would be huge for South Carolina with the depth of the staff that they have. They could go ahead and solidify that closing spot because that'll be really important in SEC play. You're going to have a lot of 1-run, 2-run, 3-run games that go to the ninth inning that you need a closer to come in there and lock it down.
Absolutely. And I think another cool thing, Alex, I've seen is it seems like the Gamecocks are pretty aggressive on the base paths. Yeah. I think that they've stolen 17 out of 19 opportunities or 15 out of 16, something like that. And John Whittle said this on the show 2 weeks ago with us. You normally only get it thrown out 32% of the time when you attempt to steal. So, give me a 70% shot with the right people on the base path and, good things can happen. If you didn't listen to that show or watch that show, go back and check it out. It was 2 weeks ago. And it's really funny because a lot of things that John said seem to be coming to fruition right now, especially with the Matthew Becker stuff that Alex was talking about. It's going to be long relief, maybe a closer. And John was like, think he's a starter. Think he's going to be a starter. Well,
and just another quick update. It's now 10-4.
10-4 Gamecocks.
Eddie Jones just singled up the middle. And they got actually now we're going to the top of the 5th.
Well, Alex, let's go ahead and hit a quick break. We're going to talk a lot about this Clemson South Carolina series coming up, and then we'll talk a little bit of basketball, a little bit of recruiting and football stuff before we get out of here, but we got to make sure that you all get to tip off at 9 p.m.
Mike here for one of the better dining options in the capital city. When I first moved there, I asked people around the radio station, where are the best wings? Well, the consensus was D's Wings. That was then. Today, they still have the best wings, but it's so much more now in their new location at 415 Meeting Street in West Columbia. Yeah, they get voted the best wings on a routine basis. Yes, they get voted the best sports bar on a routine basis, but they're not just about wings, and really, they're not just a sports bar. It is a family-run local restaurant and bar with 20 TVs and 25 beers on tap. And how about these daily specials? Every Monday night at D's, you've got 75-cent wings from 4 until closing. Tacos on Tuesday. Then on Wednesday, 18 wings and a pitcher of beer for $29. You've also got ribs and oyster bucket specials on Thursday. And no matter how big the party is, 20 or more, no problem. Just call ahead of time and they'll take terrific care of you. They'll do takeout as well. And guess what? A human will answer the phone and take the order. Billy and his staff do an outstanding job. Check out D's 415 Meeting Street in West Columbia.
And as I always say, make sure you check out D's. Alex Jones went there last night. He sent me a picture of his meal, and I said, I cannot wait to get back to Columbia and to enjoy it. But Alex, turn our attention to Carolina Clemson. We all know what the Carolina Clemson football rivalry is in this state, and baseball's no different. These teams don't like each other. These fans don't like each other. And this is going to start up Friday night. I don't know what Clemson's doing right now. I know they had a midweek game. Maybe Alex can find that here. Oh, you already have it?
I was just looking. They won 20-7 over Winthrop.
Okay, so Winthrop 20-7 win. Obviously, the Gamecocks struggled a little bit with Winthrop on the road last week. But this will kick off 7 p.m. Doug Kingsmore Stadium. You can find that game on ACC Network. The Gamecocks overall, they've lost 56 of the 85 games they played at Doug Kingsmore, or at least in Clemson, going back all time. Clemson does lead this series 186 to 145 to 2 all time. Carolina has won 86 of the 170 games that have been played in Columbia. And since this game started with a neutral field, the Gamecocks are 8-6 overall. So it's going to go Friday night, 7 p.m. in Clemson. Then it's going to go to Greenville at the Greenville Drive Stadium. I think that game starts at 1:30 or 2 on Saturday. And then Sunday, you have a 5 p.m. first pitch in Columbia. Gamecocks have, Gamecocks are 4-7 against Clemson since the beginning of the 2021 season. I'm just going to start doing like post-COVID. Like you have benchmarks in life. Post-COVID, 4-7. Clemson did win both games last year by a score of 5-4. The game on Friday night went to 12 innings. And then, I guess Saturday went 12 innings. Sunday was regulation 5-4, 9 innings. And then the Friday night game got postponed, rained out, and never got played again. So looking at this, Clemson's ranked 13th in the country according to D1 Baseball. Clemson's 6-1 on the season. They just beat Winthrop tonight, so they're 7-1 on the season. This past weekend, Clemson went 3-0 on the weekend with a 12-7 win over North Carolina A&T, a 4-3 win over VCU, and a 4-2 win over North Carolina A&T. It was kind of weird how they did that. Clemson's done some kind of round-robin stuff to start the season. As a team, Clemson is hitting .291 on the season, so a little bit better than South Carolina with a slugging percentage of .386 and an on-base percentage of .414. Their leading hitter so far is Dominic Listy, hitting .435. He has 11 RBIs and a .522 slugging percentage. And there's only one other Tiger that's hitting over 300 on the season. Camarella, who a lot of Gamecock fans know, he's going to be a pretty high draft pick this year, struggling, batting .250 on the season with only 2 RBIs. Probably changed tonight with a 20-7 win. I would imagine that he was a big part of that. And then their pitching staff has been pretty good, as Alex mentioned so far. I don't have the stats in front of me. But, Alex, so we got South Carolina and we got Clemson coming up Friday night starting in Clemson, South Carolina. What's your feel for this?
Yeah, I'm not too sure. It kind of feels like it's pretty close match between the two teams. I mean, you look at Clemson; they've got some good wins early to start. I mean, they went to Arlington to start the season, and had 2 really good wins against Oklahoma State and Arizona. And that Ole Miss game, I think Ole Miss may be a little bit better than people thought they were going to be, but the Ole Miss game kind of got away from it in that the run rule 7-inning game. But I mean, this is a team that they've got the star power. You mentioned Cam Canarella; he's really good both offensively and defensively. I mean, I think. Last year in that the regional, you saw some of the plays he was making in center field. He's really good. So, I mean, it should be a whole lot of fun. I mean, this is one of the best series in the country from a rivalry standpoint. And really one of the best ones of the year. And it's going to probably have a national spotlight on it just because of the timing and all that. So it should be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think my initial thoughts on it is, look, for me and Alex, it's hard to stay in touch with many teams outside of the SEC. It's really difficult. I really can't tell you much about Clemson. I can honestly say I haven't watched a single out of their entire season, whether they were batting or they were pitching. I can look at numbers. I can tell you that South Carolina is pretty even with them. Clemson's probably played a tougher schedule. Obviously, they do have that one loss by 10 runs. I can tell you they're not hitting that great. But I can also tell you that with this rivalry, just throw the records out the window. It really doesn't matter because South Carolina especially is a state where these kids care. And the guys that are going to be in orange and purple and white and the kids that are going to be in garnet and black and white, they're going to step up and they're going to play really, really hard for 9 innings 3 times this upcoming weekend. So for 27 innings, this is going to be a bloodbath. I do think that South Carolina has, in my opinion, currently the best hitter in the series with Ethan Petrie. I think he can change a game, and we've obviously seen games get changed in this rivalry over the past couple of years with, a guy just hitting 3 or 4 bombs in a weekend. That could happen. I think that it's going to be tough for South Carolina because you're playing your second road game of the season in Clemson and the biggest game of the season so far. And then you're going to go to Greenville. And look, there's a lot of Gamecocks in Greenville. Like I would imagine that would be 50-50 as far as fans. And you're going to come home to Columbia and play at Founders Park, Ray Tanner Field. And hopefully, you've already won the series if you're a Gamecock fan and, potentially going for a sweep. But I would anticipate a hard game. I don't think there's going to be anything easy in this one. I think that this Gamecock team under Paul Mainieri is going to be learning how to win. They've done a good job so far, but they're going to be tested more than they have this entire season so far. And look, D1 baseball ranks Clemson 13th in the country for a reason, right, Alex?
Yeah. Yeah, they're a really good team. And, when you think about this series, I think it's going to come down, mainly, I think pitching is one thing it's going to come down to. Can South kind of keep its momentum that it's had? Can the weekend starters give them enough? And, I think they got a chance to. But can the weekend starters give them enough to where they can, keep, go into that depth of the bullpen that we know South Carolina has and get it to where they can make it to where Brandon Sweeney's coming into the game. And I think it's just, can they continue to play solid defense as well? Defense can travel. Obviously, it's going to have to travel in the first 2 games. And can the defense continue to play as well as it has been so far? I think that's going to be 2 of the biggest keys in this series.
I agree with you, Alex. And look, if you're not listening to the morning show and you're not watching the afternoon show, Chief Sports does a great job with giving you so much coverage. Joe Machika, if he wasn't on tonight, it's going to be probably on tomorrow night. You have the Mike and JC Morgan, or the Mike Morgan and JC Sherbert show. You have Chin Music. You have High School Sports Talk. Like, go ahead and make sure you grab that app and you're paying attention, because JB is probably going to have a lot of guests on that Alex and I are not having on tonight that can tell you a lot about this game, the series, this rivalry. And I would encourage you to make sure you're watching and listening throughout the week. Alex, do you have a prediction for us?
I feel like South Carolina's going to find a way to go 2-1. I think it's one that's going to be highly competitive. If you get it to where I think the key is just get it Sunday, see what you can do there in front of the home crowd. But I think South Carolina can find a way to do it 2-1.
Yeah, I think this is an opportunity, and Coach Paul Mainieri doesn't sit there and say we circled this series or that series. It's 100% day to day. But at the same time, like, I think these kids have bought into what Coach Mainieri is selling. And I think there's an opportunity for the Gamecocks to win this series, potentially sweep this series. But I'm going to go with a Gamecock win for the series 2-1. I think that they win in Clemson and they lose on Saturday and they win on Sunday in Founders Park, which would be an incredible, incredible environment.
Yeah, it should be a whole lot of fun. And, I'll go 2-1 as well, like I said. But I think I'm going to go in the Greenville game. They'll find a way to win that one, then find a way to win Game 3 at home.
Yeah. So women's basketball bounced back. Obviously, it was a tough loss to UConn in Colonial Life Arena, snapping a 71-game home winning streak in brutal fashion, let's be honest. Like, it was an ugly, ugly game for the Gamecocks. UConn couldn't miss. We talked about all this on last week's show. But the women rallied back. I think they won by 40 or 30, and they won by 28 or 32. They have – who do they have coming up, Alex? Let me pull up my notes here.
They got Ole Miss Thursday night.
Yeah, they got Ole Miss Thursday night, and then
then
that's on the road. And they have
Yeah.
Kentucky, who's ranked 15th in the country, coming in to close out the regular season this weekend. It's crazy. Next week we'll be talking SEC women's basketball tournament stuff. Don't forget the women's season ends a week before the men's do. But I think overall, Alex, just looking at it, this season, especially in women's college basketball, has been crazy. I think there's probably like a top 6 to 8 teams in the country. And I think, if I were filling out a bracket right now, I'd probably take the 1 and the 2s all the way to the Elite 8. And then, getting to the Final Four and win the national championship would be a crapshoot for me. But South Carolina is definitely at the table still.
Yeah, we talk about with the men's tournament how fun that one's going to be, but I think the women's tournament can be really fun as well, both SEC and in the NCAA tournament. You look at the SEC, you really got kind of the top 3 right now of Texas, South Carolina, LSU. Texas and South Carolina are 13-1, and it's going to be really interesting to watch this stretch run for both of those teams because if they both end up 15-1 in conference play, I think I saw where it goes to a coin flip for the number 1 seed in the SEC tournaments. That's going to be interesting. And then really with the NCAA tournament, it's kind of the same thing. Like I think, I kind of agree with you with, how far things can go, but there's a lot of really good, top end talent teams this year. I mean, you talk about, UConn, UCLA, Notre Dame was just number 1. You got Texas and South Carolina, like LSU is still really good. And
NC State's sleeping.
Yeah.
Duke.
I mean, it's going to be a whole lot of fun. I think it's probably could be primed to see around the NCAA tournament. Could see some upsets as well because some of these teams that maybe are middle of the pack in their conference are finding ways to upset some of these teams in the top of their leagues.
Yeah, and we'll turn our attention now to the men's side, and obviously we talked about the women lost to Texas a couple of weeks ago, but the men found a way to exact revenge on Texas this past weekend. I've already told Alex this. I went to the baseball game Saturday. Saturday night, I was catching snippets of the game, kind of keeping up with the score. So Alex knows way more than I do. I've watched about half of the first half so far. Now, I'll go back and watch it. But Alex, what were your thoughts on the game against Texas? Thoughts on atmosphere at Colonial Life Arena? Even considering that Gamecocks were winless going into it.
Yeah, going into the game, you kind of thought this was a serious opportunity for South Carolina to find a way to get that first win because, Texas has really been kind of up and down this season. And they were coming off beating Kentucky, but Kentucky was a little shorthanded without Lamont Butler and some of those guys. And Lamont Butler's key to that Kentucky team. But, in this game, you look at it in the first half, I mean, South Carolina had an 18-point lead in the first half at 40-22, and it was really because of defense. And I mean, giving up only 22 points, but the key to Texas was really to stopping their offense was stopping Trey Johnson, who's one of the best freshmen in the country, one of the best players in the country, and you held him to 9 points in the first half, and he was the only one that was really even close to double figures. And they ended up shooting 29% and 16%, or 29% from the field and 16% from 3 in the first half. And really, then in the second half, it got to the point where it was really, Trey Johnson was the one that was keeping Texas within reach. I mean, he ended up with 20 points in the second half and 29 points overall. And in South Carolina, then the big keys for South Carolina in this game was they shot the ball from the field pretty well and then made enough threes, made 6 of 18 from 3, shot 43% from the field. But then it was the free throws. I mean, South Carolina finished 34 or 45 from the free throw. And we've kind of talked about on here how, South Carolina ranks towards the top in the country and getting to the free throw line. That's something that they're really good at. And then on Saturday night against Texas, they just had to connect, and they did for the most part. I mean, like I said, 34 of 85. And another key to the game was Texas came into the game, I think it was forcing maybe 12.1, 12.3 turnovers per game. South Carolina only turned it over 8 times in that game. And that was just a huge key to the game to go along with Colin Murray-Bowles playing like a potential first-round pick like everybody thinks he is. And he looked like he was aggressive on Saturday night, and that's something they've been kind of asking him more to do because he's a really unselfish player, which is a good thing that he'll, try to find his open teammates on the perimeter. But Saturday night, he was really just attacking the rim and finding mismatches and making the most of it.
Yeah, and there's oftentimes I can look at a box score and I can see like the final score, but then I dig in and I say, okay, well, how did this team win? And if you can make that many free throws in a game when, you're not necessarily known as a great free throw shooting team, and Alex just laid the stats out, and you shoot 31% from three, and you only turn the ball over 8 times, that leads to a double-digit victory, and that's exactly what happened.
And another just kind of quick, crazy stat on this game, Jamari Thomas, he finished with 15 points, but he made 1 shot from the field. That's because he connected on his free throws and made 12 of 13 from the free throw line. And a lot of those were key free throws down the stretch when Texas was trying to find their way back into the game. I mean, that was a key 12 of 13 from the free throw line.
Well, I will say this, Alex, and it's funny looking back, and you and I have texted. I mean, I've texted with JB. I've texted with, everybody, JC as well. JC's kind of pissed about this season. that is what it is. But there have been so many times when you get to the end of the game and the Gamecocks aren't in the bonus. So teams can foul them, extend the game out, take 3 to 5 seconds off of the game clock every single time. And, for a long time, it was, Gamecocks shooting 69% from the free throw line. Who cares? Like, go ahead, put them in the bonus. Let's waste 10, 15 seconds all we can on 3 fouls. But for them to shoot as well as they did at the free throw line, that's a huge thing. And then the turnovers have cost the Gamecocks at least 4 conference games this year. I can't go back. I can't remember what happened in Indiana, North Florida, or Xavier, but I know what happened in conference play. And look, 11 turnovers a game isn't going to kill you, but 17, 18, 22, 24 turnovers, you can't overcome that.
Yeah, I mean, you talking about the conference losses. Think about that Florida game, at the home Colonial Life Arena game, where South Carolina had that lead, and then Florida brought the press on, and the turnovers just inbound the ball turnovers. I mean, that's what kind of the late shot by Will Richard, won the game for him, but it was really the turnovers. They couldn't handle the pressure, and that's what lost South Carolina the game. Texas, they're kind of the end, kind of did put some pressure on South Carolina to try to get back in that game, and for the most part, South Carolina handled it pretty well. There were a few mistakes here and there with the press, but I think that's what having Jamari Thomas back in that game was helpful with. But again, in those times where Texas kind of started to foul and try to see if they could force South Carolina to earn it at the free throw line, they did, and that was kind of one of the keys to the game.
Absolutely. And like I said, I've seen snippets. I've watched the first 10 minutes. I haven't seen all of it, but I did see the box score, and Alex is 100% right. And everything you're saying right now lines up exactly how I would have predicted the game to go based on a box score. So tonight, we're 17 minutes away from tip-off, Alex. Gamecocks have another big test. It's kind of ridiculous what this SEC is this year. And before we get into the Missouri game, Alex, it's funny to me because I look at the computer numbers. Like that's what I kind of focused on. I think the computer numbers are pretty daggum good. South Carolina opened the season around like 69, 75 or whatever at Ken Pom. And right now they're right there at 69 to 75. And so like people like to poop on them. I think they're pretty daggum good. And sometimes you just have bad luck and 3 or 4 possessions go the wrong way in a game. And sometimes it's 3 or 4 possessions that go the wrong way in 4 games, and you lose by 1, 3, 4, 7, whatever it is. And the Gamecocks have obviously had that. I think this is a great opportunity for the Gamecocks. I think that any Gamecock fan should be proud of the way these Gamecocks fought back and were able to find a way to get a double-digit win in SEC play when a lot of people said 0-19, fire Lamont Paris. And I've said this entire season, and I will die on this hill. I will get on my soapbox. I don't care. I think Lamont Paris has done a great job coaching this year when you think about the talent on this team. And I don't think anyone in the world can sit there and tell me that Lamont Paris has a top 40 or top 50 talent team in the country. I don't think so.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And, I think I'm interested to see how the team plays tonight, getting that win against Texas. I think, Colin Murray Bowles mentioned it post-game. It was just kind of like a sigh of relief for them to get that win and get the first win, really. And so now with that pressure off, I'm really interested to see how they play tonight. And, with it being on the road, South Carolina recently has not been good on the road. Like they've had some double-digit losses. You think back to Florida and LSU, but they've had some games too on the road where they've been pretty close. I mean, you think about that Vanderbilt game; they were it was another one of those losses in conference play where they were 1 possession, 2 possessions away from winning the game. So with Missouri specifically, I mean, this team's really good. I mean, Dennis Gates is a really good head coach and has done a great job turning that program around from 0-18 to what they are now. And I mean, Mark Mitchell, Duke transfer, he really leads the show. I mean, he's 13.7 points per game, but the two that are really kind of the key player, I mean, Mark Mitchell's a key player, but two players that were on that team last year, and Caleb Grill and Tamar Bates, they've been really solid this year too. And if Caleb Grill's on healthy on that team last year, I think he had maybe a wrist injury last year that held him out. If he's healthy on that team doesn't go 0-18. And we saw what Tamar Bates could do last year, but both of those guys are right at 40% from the 3-point line. Bates is 40.9 and Grill's 43.3. So I mean, this team, and they're pretty deep too. I think they're top 10 in the country in bench points. So then obviously you got the Josh Gray factor being that it's his first year there, and then he's played in every game I think in 3.2 and 5.1 rebounds per game. So I mean it's going to be an interesting game. It's going to be a big challenge for South Carolina defensively because this team, they can really shoot the ball.
Yeah, Alex, you mentioned it. They got 3 players averaging at least 13 points a game. They have 4 more players averaging at least 6.7 points a game. They're a great offensive rebounding team. They're great at forcing turnovers and limiting turnovers when they have the ball. KenPom has them as the 14th best team in the country. South Carolina is a 13-point underdog tonight. And I think it's going to be tough for the Gamecocks to win. I don't know if it's going to be a 20-point loss. I don't know if it's going to be a 10-point loss. It might be a 13-point loss. It might be a 5-point win. You just never know with this kind of stuff. But the computers have been pretty daggum good so far for the Gamecocks. But none of the computers had the Gamecocks beating Texas. And that's why they jumped from 80 and 90th in the country to mid-70s, because they were favored to lose by, I think, like 3 or 4, and they ended up winning by double digits. So it's an interesting game for me, Alex, just from the standpoint of Missouri just went 0 and whatever it was last year. And now South Carolina was in the midst of that. They're going to have to battle back. We'll see what happens. Alex, what are your predictions on this game? And I'll go after you.
Yeah, the way South Carolina's played on the road does have me worried a little bit, But at the same time, I think now having that win, secured, that first win, I think, like I said a minute ago, I think there's a lot of pressure off of this team, and they can kind of just go and play freely and see if they can end the season in a good way. And so, I think tonight you just try to go and find a way to play freely, but I think Missouri may just be a little bit too much, and I could see maybe 8 to 10 point victory for Missouri somewhere in there. I just think that Missouri's just really, really good this year, have a lot of really good wins, and I think, the 3-point shooting may be the difference in this one.
I give it about a 10% chance the Gamecocks win the game outright. I'd probably take the Gamecocks plus 13 based on what I've seen from them so far in their fight. But yeah, I think it's probably a 90% chance Missouri's going to win, and that sucks. For Gamecock fans that are watching this and getting excited for the game, and especially off the win against Texas. But, we're all going to be watching. Alex and I will both be watching, and then Alex will be in Colonial Life Arena Saturday against John Calipari and his first-year Arkansas team. And look, Colonial Life Arena and the fans matter. Like, get there, go support the team. It's a lot of fun. Just being there. I mean, I remember so many games, like it wasn't even South Carolina, just being at a basketball game is fun. So make sure you check that out. Before we get out of here, and we don't have much time, so Alex is going to have to go on a little bit of a blitz here. Alex, we'll start with Jared Curtis and him removing the Gamecocks from consideration, along with Auburn and a couple other teams. He has the final top 2. So let's go, and I'm going to tell you everything I'm going to ask for, and you can just work through it. We're going to do Gamecock quarterback recruiting, and then what you've heard from winter workouts and who stood out, and spring practice is almost here.
Yeah, from a quarterback recruiting standpoint, obviously you mentioned Jared Curtis kind of cut his list to Georgia and Oregon. I think that's one that's maybe been expected. It seemed like South Carolina was maybe running third in that one, but and had an official visit scheduled, but that's not going to happen now with him cutting his list at 2. So with him out, I think the 2 that you're really watching right now are Landon Duckworth, who is a former South Carolina commitment, decommitted here. I think it was over the summer, but is still very much interested, and there's a lot of teams coming after him. Then the other one's Brady Smigel from California. There's a lot of interest there too. There was a connection with Darren Usher when he was worked at UCLA, so that's an interesting connection to watch there with those two guys in the quarter, or with those guys, and then at quarterback recruiting. I think that's really just the two to keep up with right now. Obviously, that board's probably going to expand a little bit just to have South Carolina have options, but I think when you look at the quarterback room right now, you really like what you have in there. You got obviously the Noras, maybe a year. Obviously, if he does really good this year, who knows? But then then you got Aaron Nolan behind him, who I think has a lot of potential. And then you got guys like Cutter Woods, who's coming in this year, and Dante Reno, and guys in that room. But from a winter workout standpoint, I'm really it sounds like things are going just about as good as you want them to. Obviously, you see a lot of the team building stuff on social media that's going on. You saw them in the indoor. I think it was playing wiffle ball maybe or something like that. It's just a lot of team building, and then a lot of that offseason work to try to bring the team closer. And once we get close to spring practice, like those early enrollees that are in right now, those guys are just still trying to adjust to college life a little bit and adjusting being away from home and all that. But I think that's going to be big for them going into spring practice. And the one group, obviously Darren Usher was on with JC and Phil, I think it was last week, and there was just a lot of praise for that wide receiver freshman class, and I think that's a group that everybody's excited to see because what South Carolina has coming back, and it's a lot of potential coming back with Jared Brown, Nick Carver, and Mazio Bennett, and guys like that. But that freshman class is going to have to step up, and I think you're here. Obviously Malik Clark and those guys are doing. There's a lot of them in it right now. 5 of the 6 are in with Malik Clark, Jordan Gidron, Lex Cyrus, Brian Rowe, and Jaden Sellers, and those guys are in right now, and it sounds like they are working really hard. And I think that's the room that right now is catching a lot of people's attention in the building. And obviously Donovan Murph's going to be in the summer, but that's a guy that should not be forgotten about. I think he could be a guy that could come in and make an impact right away. So that's kind of the room I'm really interested to see in spring practice. Obviously, you got the defensive tackle room and all those different rooms and position groups to watch, but that wide receiver room I'm pretty excited to see.
Yeah, and I can tell you, based on what I've heard, is that a lot of these transfers, especially on the offensive line and defensive line, have come in and impressed. They can move some weight around. They look pretty good physically. Linebacker, you have Justin Okoronkwa and then Sean Murphy, and they're going to be pushing the younger kids to say, hey, we've been here, we've done this. Like we're gonna take your spot. That's why we came here. The other guys, Donovan Darden, a freshman, AJ Holloway, a freshman. I've heard both of them have done some good things. Kendall Daniels Jr. Heard a little bit of Nick Imanwari comparisons as someone that could be a safety or a corner. I think he's probably going to play corner as things stand right now, and that's just a really big kid back there. So we're going to be all over this, y'all, and we'll probably, basketball is going to end soon. I don't know if the Gamecocks are going to make any kind of postseason tournament on the men's side. We'll be here to cover the women. And then it's going to be baseball, softball, and spring practice. Yep. And then spring games can be here before you know it. And hopefully the Gamecocks do really, really well on both diamonds and find opportunities to play in the NCAA tournament. We have more opportunities to talk about it. But recruiting's about to pick up. I know we talked about a couple of weeks ago. We had our junior day at South Carolina, or underclassmen day, which I think they call it now because they got kids probably from the class of 2038 coming in the way things are going right now. But so we're 5 minutes away, Alex, 5 minutes away from Gamecocks versus Missouri. Any parting shots for us?
No, just, stick tuned to the Big Spur. We've got it all covered. I know Hale's at the baseball game tonight. John Little's actually, I think he's up at OTE right now, checking out Eli Ellis and those guys at that game. And right now, baseball's up 10-4, bottom of the 6th. So obviously, Big Spur is going to have it all covered. And baseball is about 5 minutes, like you said, about 5 minutes away from tipping off.
Well, as always, we appreciate all of you for listening. We appreciate all of you for joining us here, watching us. When you hang out with us, you give us the most valuable thing you have, which is your time. And it never goes unnoticed or underappreciated. Do want to shout out some folks that were in the chat room tonight. Craig and Cam, appreciate you guys. You guys are always here and supporting us. Brian Harrison and his mom, we love y'all to death. Thank y'all so much. Exo and Billy are always here. And we just appreciate y'all being a part of this show. And look, pretty soon we're going to have probably like just a live listener, and we'll put something out there where you can send us emails if you have questions, and we'll have a live Q&A between me and Alex and just breaking everything down. But again, thank you so much for watching tonight. Thank you so much for joining us. And let's go see if the Gamecocks can beat those Missouri Tigers up in Columbia, Missouri on the Mayor's Cup in basketball. Well, Alex, appreciate your time tonight as always. And we hope you all have a great rest of the week, and we will be back next week to talk to you.